You're making all this content for 5% of your audience. So what do you have to do? You have to start spending more money. So sometimes it's not about creating more content and then when nobody's coming to your site or nobody's interacting with it saying, what's wrong, what happened? Sometimes it's putting money behind good content.
The following marketing information and discussion is provided for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as professional guidance or consultancy. Just enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to The Buyer's Journey by Chemexus, a discussion-based podcast focused on gaining your business a competitive advantage by eliminating marketing confusion and making your digital marketing work for you. I'm Matthew McGroarty, the social media content producer here at Chemexus.
I am Len Ward, the managing partner at Chemexus.
And I'm Josh Lyons, the digital marketing coordinator here at Chemexus.
So on today's show, we're going to be talking a bit about the state of the advertising industry and a little bit about why it is so hard to gain a competitive advantage with your digital marketing campaign. And we think here that a lot of it has to do with that digital marketing in a lot of ways is very confusing, especially for people who don't know anything about marketing or are focused on your business, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of clients who come to us, they're confused, they're business owners, they're focused on their business and they know they need to do marketing, but they're not sure how, they're not sure where, they're not sure how much they need to spend, et cetera, et cetera. And if they have tried digital marketing in the past, it either hasn't worked for them or it's worked a little bit, but not nearly as much as they would like. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Len, can you give us a small sort of history on what's been developing in the digital marketing world for the last 5 years or so? Because 5 years ago, way different than today.
I mean, and actually, if you even kind of like go back something like 15 years ago, just to kind of slim down to where we are, you went from like basically 15 search engines to one search engine. In the last 5 years, Facebook, Instagram, their actual revenue that's flying into them for ad dollars basically fits firmly next to Google. They're both at almost 40% market share, both of them, total combined 80%. More companies are entering the digital marketing space now than anywhere even remotely close to where we were 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I used to tell clients when I was pitching them, I used to say, look, this is a great time to get into digital marketing because barely 60% of small businesses and medium-sized businesses have even started doing digital marketing. So you have like a wide open land. Can't really say that anymore. Right now, because of what we've seen, the competition for digital inventory is really, really skyrocketing. So 5 years ago, you were able to run pay-per-click campaigns on Google, Bing, Yahoo, when Facebook was out, it was fairly affordable. It still cost money, but it was fairly affordable. Now we've reached a point where the competition for that inventory is rising, which is now making the cost rise. And I think because of all that right now, the average company is not allocating the actual money they need to really make digital marketing work for them. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, where we are.
So a lot of times when we talk about metrics, we're talking about, with Facebook, Instagram, we're talking about impressions, we're talking about click-throughs and things like that. But a lot of, I think, small businesses and people who should be doing digital marketing don't necessarily know which metrics matter, what the metrics even mean sometimes, and that can cause a lot of confusion. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think you have to know, there's 4 things that you have to know when you walk into a digital marketing campaign. And I really, really wish that this stuff was promoted and advertised a lot more. But as it stands right now, the average person sees 3,500 ads a day. Google/YouTube, Facebook/Instagram account for nearly 80% of all ad dollars online right now. It takes an average of 10 touches for a consumer to do anything with your company in any way, shape, or form. And here's the most telling statistic. 98.9% of people who come to your website are not going to do a damn thing. They're not going to contact you. They're not going to fill out a form. They're not going to download your free whatever you're giving away. They're not going to do anything. So you have to understand those numbers walking in. And I think if you don't have that fundamental understanding of a digital marketing campaign, the chances are you've already stepped off on a foot towards failure in your campaign, because those are, in my opinion, the 4 most important things to know right now.
Can you elaborate on the 10 touches?
So 10 touches. So you have to think about the modern searcher. And this kind of goes back to where we were 5 years ago, where you could get away with an SEO campaign. You could get away with a pay-per-click campaign. Because we were feeding into what we used to call the intelligent searcher. So somebody would kind of go in and they would search for things and they know what they want. What's happened now is that because of the increased level of competition, because of the increased amount of platforms, the growth of Facebook, the growth of YouTube, even things like Snapchat and TikTok and things like that, an individual is going to a lot of different places before they make a decision. And normally what it is your message has to resonate or touch that individual 10 times across a myriad of different platforms for the individual to finally come in and say, hey, I want to interact with your brand. And even that, the interaction of the brand could be just coming to your website, where now you can retarget them. Maybe they're actually downloading that form, where now you have an email and you can start emailing them. But it is 10 times before they start doing any type of interaction, with your brand.
All right, Len. So I want you to talk a little bit about last click attribution, because a lot of the time when people are seeing their reports, they're looking, at this last click attribution, and it's sort of throwing them off, and it's honestly what's causing a ton of marketing confusion.
It is. And the thing with the last click attribution is, for years you would always look at your analytics report, your conversion report, and say, okay, well, here's how many leads came in on pay-per-click, here's how many leads came in on SEO. So last click attribution is basically what's generating a lead / conversion / goal based upon the platform they came in. So if you're looking at your analytics, and if your goal is to get a downloadable white paper and you see the person came from Facebook, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, they came in from Facebook and they downloaded this, so Facebook's great. Or you may go in and say, oh, look, we're somebody came in from organic search and they contacted us. You would immediately think that, okay, well, SEO is kicking ass, or pay-per-click's doing great, or Facebook's doing great. It still goes back to what we said earlier. It goes back to there is a buyer's journey. There is multiple platforms individuals are going to go on. To give credit to just pay-per-click for generating a lead or just SEO for generating a lead is crazy. And what happens is that too many clients are looking at this last click attribution, which they still are, and even Google themselves will come out and said, please stop looking at last click attribution. There's a journey, but they're looking at it and then they're allocating dollars based upon that. They're making decisions based upon that. So they're making decisions on their SEO campaign based upon that. They're making insane critical decisions on pay-per-click based upon that. And that's not something you should do. You have to have a little bit of faith and understanding that the buyer is going to go through an entire journey before they reach this platform. Now, does reach a conversion? Does last click attribution work sometimes? Absolutely. If you're a DUI attorney and you were just and your client was arrested last night, I think it's something like you got 48 hours or something like that. You have to get an attorney right away. You have a raging toothache and you need a problem right now and you just typed in emergency dentist. Yes, that's where pay-per-click and things like that in the emergency world is absolutely going to produce last click attribution. And I'm all about, you want to go on that and ride on that? I'll do that. The average business, though, that we're working with, the average company in this country is not emergency right now services. So that's kind of what last click attribution is.
Earlier, when you were talking about a lot of the things that have changed from 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, I feel like we've had clients and other just stories that I've read about people who are running, just SEO and just pay-per-click campaigns. So basically, the only thing they're doing is putting money into Google, right? And those things aren't necessarily working out for them. And when I think of people just working on SEO, I think 5 years ago, SEO 5 and 15 years ago, SEO was top dog, super important, making sure you're getting those rankings, making sure your metadata is up to date. And SEO still very important today, but obviously it's leaning, as we've talked about, in what is basically becoming a paid marketplace. So you can kind of talk about that a little bit.
So I think one of the best things we saw, and we spoke about on other podcasts, but there was a report put out by Rand Fiskin, who was the founder of Moz. But he put this report out under his new company called SparkToro. And it was a report on exactly what's happening with Google traffic. And we've said multiple times on other podcasts and speaking with clients, we thought it was one of the most important reports we've seen in years. So let's just say all of your dollars and cents right now are shifted towards SEO. Right now, 50% of all searches on Google produce 0 clicks. That means they come to Google, they search something, and they don't do anything. They don't even click. Their answer has already been provided in the metadata or whatever Google's displaying. Another 12% of that still, if somebody does click something, they're actually ending up on another Google property. That could be they're in an image search, they're on YouTube, they're on Google Maps, Google News, something along those lines. So right now you're at 62% right now of traffic you're not going to be getting unless you're on Google property or you've optimized your site for no-click conversions. Lastly, you're looking at about 7 to 10% of traffic is going to pay-per-click. So let's just say that you're a company that's solely focused on SEO and that's it. You now basically at best have a 30% chance to get traffic coming to your website. And maybe right now you maybe look at your analytics and say, hey, but I'm still getting 80% traffic to SEO. You're at your peak. It's going to start pulling back. So really understanding the modern searcher, understanding the algorithms, what Google's showing, understanding that Google is in the business to make money. You have to understand that when you look at that, you're beginning to see it's got to the point now where there's a general gradual pullback in SEO. I get frustrated because it's amazing how many really smart people in a digital space keep pounding home SEO. Let's do all these great campaigns. We got all this great stuff we're going to do. Look, I'm not sitting here telling you that stuff doesn't work. And I'm not telling you that you're not going to absolutely make money off an SEO campaign. But to sit there and make that the crown jewel of a digital marketing campaign anymore is foolish. And it's just wrong. It doesn't make sense anymore. It's a part of it. And as we'll walk into the buyer's journey a little more, it actually only sits in parts of the consideration phase and parts of the purchase phase. You get a lot of people saying, oh, well, it's awareness. They became aware of me when they search for something online. No, if they're searching for something online, they're already aware of a pain point or a problem. So you're just caught up in that consideration phase, which is good. It's good traffic to get. But I think those numbers are really telling in Google. Google's clearly, right now, if they've pushed organic down to say 30% of that's all that's available search-wise, it's moving to the point where we've all said Google's first page is moving to paid. It's just turned into a complete paid world. And it's time that companies really have to start embracing this.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point there about everything turning into a paid world. I think we talked about Google, which normally when we talk about ad dollar allocation, it's normally 40% in Google and Google properties, so YouTube, et cetera. And then another 40% in Facebook and Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. And I think that's another area that we can talk about. Facebook, even just 2 years ago, was seriously trimming down their organic reach, basically. I mean, we saw in multiple different algorithm updates where they were talking about cutting that down. So I think we should just kind of talk about the slow decline of Facebook organic and the rise of paid Facebook.
So 5% of your audience on your company's Facebook page is going to see your post on a daily basis. So if you are engaged in an active content distribution campaign on Facebook, on Instagram, only 5% of your audience is ever going to see it. What does it mean? It means you're going to have to spend more money to actually get in there and get your posts seen. And this leads to ultimately one of the major points of confusion which happens in marketing. So you listen to your Gary Vaynerchuks, who we're a fan of here, you listen to other people and they tell you just keep making more content, keep making all this content, it's going to get out there. The problem is you're making all this content for 5% of your audience. So what do you have to do? You have to start spending more money. So sometimes it's not about creating more content and then when nobody's coming to your site or nobody's interacting with it saying, what's wrong, what happened? Sometimes it's putting money behind good content, letting that grow, see what happens, and then put more money after that on another piece of content that bolts on with that content. So that's where confusion happens. We've reached a point where companies just think, well, let's just do a bunch of tasks. We're going to create content. We're going to create more images. We're going to constantly do more video. And there's no strategy behind it. And unfortunately, I'm not saying that you should stop doing organic, do not stop SEO and do not stop organic posting on social media. But if your strategy is not leading the way with, well, I have to identify a budget that I have to spend to get my content out there into the right hands so they become aware of me, again, you're now engaged in a campaign that's most likely going to fail.
So I think it's important, Len, how, we discussed how organic SEO has decreased to 30%, and then you have now organic Facebook that is reaching only 5% of your audience. So I think it's important if you could discuss, why businesses have, they're confused about low investments. They have this number in their head. They might say to you, hey, just use this number and advertise for us. So I think it'd be interesting for you to sort of describe and tell us why finding that right allocation in digital marketing and figuring out how much you really do need to spend is important for us as an agency to help your business grow.
Yeah, so for years you could ride the digital marketing train, and your customer acquisition, what you invested in your customer acquisition costs for digital marketing was low. And you got a really, really good return for it. It was even more awesome when you were basically, paying somebody not much money to run an SEO campaign, and the SEO was producing really, really good leads. But those days have changed. So before I kind of touch on numbers that you want to think about, so Google's Q2 earnings, the numbers came in at $34 billion. Let me repeat that, $34 billion just for a quarter. That's mind-blowing. Of that, $30 billion went to advertising. So you have to be, and this growth trajectory is through the roof. What's happening right now? Facebook's mirroring it. You're starting to look at other digital platforms that are mirroring it. But Facebook and Google clearly are the two that have broken away from the pack, and they're the ones that are really, really making the money. When you hear these numbers and you hear the Wall Street money that's, getting involved in this, you have to understand that Google has to sit down, and their main goal is to increase shareholder value. They have to sit down across the table of really savvy men and women who all they do day in and day out is invest in certain types of companies. And they have to explain themselves as to how business went this quarter, what happened. It's called earnings calls. Google's job is to try to make more money. So no matter how many times you think you're going to outsmart digital and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, the minute Wall Street got involved with Google and Facebook is the minute the real players came in. How does that translate over to what your question is? The question is that you have to understand what your customer acquisition cost is for each client or service line that you're trying to promote. And that all starts with saying, okay, my revenue goal is this, and my customer acquisition cost is this. So once you know that, you have to then look at your customer acquisition cost and say to myself, well, I can no longer do 5 or 10% digital marketing. You need to now be at 50 to 65% of your customer acquisition cost need to be invested in digital marketing platforms, namely leading with Google, their properties, Facebook, their properties. That's kind of how you have to look at it. And as the companies who are not spending that, the companies who are spending maybe 5, 10% of their customer acquisition cost are the ones that are looking around, blaming the agency, blaming their internal marketing team, and saying my campaign's not working. Your campaign's not working because it's the line we all hate to hear. You're not investing the money you need to invest to get to where you're trying to get to.
So then the question then is, Len, how much should a business be spending on digital marketing? And also, where should they be spending this? How should they be allocating it?
So there's actually a mathematical equation that factors in this. And this is something that all business owners, all law firm managing partners, everybody should really understand what that is. And that's a lifetime value ratio of your customer. And the right lifetime value ratio of a company that is healthy, of doing well, is a 3-to-1 lifetime value ratio. And that's basically the customer acquisition cost divided by your lifetime value of your client will give you that 3-to-1 ratio. Once you do those mathematics, it'll actually arrive at a number that you should be spending in digital marketing. So basically for every customer you acquire, you're going to know how much you have to spend on digital marketing because it's already baked in your customer acquisition cost. And if your customer acquisition cost is done right and your marketing is done right, then in theory you should be hitting a 3-to-1 lifetime value ratio. So the days of we'll just throw a number at me, or if I make money, you make money. That's not how it works. It works where knowing what the mathematical equation is and assuming, okay, if I have all of my money right and I know what I have to invest, then making sure you're on the right platforms with the right strategy. In theory, your campaign should produce a 3-to-1 lifetime value ratio. It's when you start looking at individual little things like SEO and rankings and traffic, that's where you go off the rails, which is exactly what a lot of these platforms want you to do because you're spending more money trying to get back on the rails. So hopefully that explains what you're trying to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're really interested in learning about the customer acquisition costs and the 3-to-1 lifetime value ratio, the next episode of The Buyer's Journey, the one right after this, they'll all be up at the same time. So if you want to go listen to it right now. We're going to talk all about customer acquisition costs, all about 3-to-1 lifetime value ratio. And then as Len mentioned, if you're interested in platforms and strategy, we're going to talk about the buyer's journey, which is the journey a buyer or potential customer client will be taking, which basically gives you the answer of, okay, I have my budget, I know my lifetime value ratio, what it's supposed to be. The buyer's journey is where I'm going to allocate all of that money, and that will be the next episode following the lifetime value ratio and customer acquisition cost episode, which will also be up right now if you are listening to this. So that's all for today's episode of The Buyer's Journey. Check us out on Comexis.com, YouTube, and anywhere you can get your podcasts, and follow us on Twitter at @buyers_journey. Thanks for listening.